So, Blue Jay fans, did Ross trick or treat us during the end of the season press conference? And I have a feeling that I know what you did in a past season. We can discuss it all here on the On Fek Circle, presented by JFtC and the Jays from the Couch radio podcast. Speaking of JFtC, there's been a terrific series of articles all throughout the year about minor leaguers. Please do check the archives. Ryan Muller is still putting up some things. And most importantly and more relevant right now, today, Jays from the Couch had an article where various couchers discussed their prime free agent targets. And coming up tomorrow morning will be many of us discussing who we would like to target on the trade market. So make sure you check those articles out. And of course, the podcast, episode 276, comes up Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern time on our YouTube channel, Twitter, and Facebook account. Plus, there's another great YouTube show that you absolutely have to watch every week. That is Sunny Side of the Dome, and that's presented by my friend and colleague, Karen Suter. Karen is a Blue Jay fan, absolutely, no doubt about it. But she knows how to balance everything out with just terrific baseball analysis. Now, her show comes up Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. It is also presented by JFtC. Welcome aboard the On Fek Circle. I am the madman across the border, the Feckless Wonder, Steve Fek. You can always tweet me at Feckless Wonder on Twitter. And if you're watching the live feed here on our YouTube channel, please do participate in the show. I'm going to present something in our Blue Jays Way segment that might cause some guilty conscience stirrings or might outrage you that I would even bring it up. But please do participate. You can put your message there. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Twitter, watching on Facebook, it wouldn't hurt if you hit a like and a subscribe as well, especially to the YouTube channel. And a couple other quick housekeeping things that I want to put together. If you notice, I've got my vintage Buffalo Bisons cap, the Blue Jays home away from home, but more importantly, their AAA affiliate, Buffalo Bisons, won the Northeast Division title. So not as many prospects at AAA, but a lot of the guys you saw trickle through Buffalo, through the Toronto Blue Jays roster throughout the year were part of that championship team. And I mention that because we have a nice loyal bunch of viewers and people that share the podcast and the various shows at one of my favorite haunts when I lived up in Western New York in North Tonawanda. So I guess they're the North Tonawanda Couchers. I cannot directly mention the restaurant or the bar area of the restaurant that you're hanging out, unless you want to pay us. Then by all means, I'll talk about it for a 30-minute show if you want to kick in some scratch. But we really do appreciate it. Seamus Nelson and the gang, you're always great and giving as far as comments and everything would go. We really do appreciate your support. So I did want to give a shout out to you and give some kudos to the Buffalo Bisons. I know a lot of you have come to the Blue Jays since the Bisons became a Blue Jays affiliate. So again, thank you for tuning in. And in case you're wondering, the ALCS is all but determined. It's going to be the Boston Red Sox cheating on one of these versus the Houston Astros cheating on one of those. I'm sure for many of the people, the more self-righteous fans out there, it really offends them that two cheating franchises would be playing for the American League pennant. But before you get too full of yourself, a little Blue Jays history, flash back to 2010, 2011. Remember the man in white out in the outfield stands? How the Blue Jays were criticized in Sports Illustrated by an ESPN report that they were regularly cheating. And we took umbrage with that. Oh my God, we Blue Jays wouldn't cheat. We're not doing that. Alex Anthopoulos did what Alex did great, threw up smoke screens about all these different things, but it came from more than one source. So before you get too judgmental, okay, yes, the Astros and Red Sox were punished and got busted for it. It wasn't as big of a priority back in 2010 and 2011. So the Blue Jays have some shady involvement with sign stealing. And I would bet everything I own or will ever own that if you put John Gibbons on a lie detector test, he could not pass it if you said, do you deny having a sign stealing program? He was one of the best. He was the Edison and Einstein of sign stealers. John Gibbons. He was great at it when he was a Met catcher, and he was terrific at it when he was a coach and manager. So don't get too filled of yourself here. We missed you last week. Some of it was technical, but honestly, part of it was I really think that most Blue Jay fans and most viewers did not want to see me smugly talk about the Blue Jays not making the playoffs. So, and I remember on Monday when we did the podcast, the last podcast, just looking at the faces and listening to the pain in the voices of Sean Doyle and Karen Suter. I literally just didn't have the heart to do the show. I was actually going to do a wake for the Blue Jays, and I just didn't have the heart. So even though we could have worked around the technical things, I said, you know what? Let's just give it a week for things to settle down and to for people to kind of regain their perspective. So this week, I want to talk about, rather than a wake for the Blue Jays. Okay, it hurts. Everybody hurts. I mean, even a heartless, smart ass like me hurts when you come that close and you overcome all of the things that you did as a franchise and as a rooting fan of that franchise. Multiple homes, injuries, poor performances, in all honesty, especially in the bullpen. You overcame all of that. You dug yourself out of a hole, and just as you were kind of climbing and pulling yourself out, boom, you ended up falling back in. The Red Sox and the damn Yankees. I still don't get that, other than what has been theorized, especially in our fake news segments on the podcast, that Major League Baseball will do anything in the world to have the Yankees be in the playoffs so they can maximize their advertising dollars. Then having the Yankees and Red Sox in the opening wild card game, I mean, that's nirvana. That's absolutely nirvana for Rob Manfred and all the marketing guys with MLB. But Ross Atkins had his end of the season press conference. I was, I don't want to call it a question and answer session. And I certainly can't call it an informational session. And that's not just Ross Atkins. I mean, any GM at the end of the year, unless you're either went to the World Series or won the World Series, you're not going to be very honest. Okay. You're going to throw up all kind of smoke screens. And Ross Atkins on his best day is a sphinx. Utterances come out, but they might as well be in Aramaic, because honestly, he's not letting any kind of inkling or any kind of hint as to what's going on happen. But, there were a lot of things that came out. Everybody already knew that Charlie Montoyo's option had been picked up, so he and the coaching staff were back. And they talked about, prospects that they're most excited about coming on. But really, there were some specific things that I want to touch on out of that press conference that I think all Blue Jay fans should consider. So for all of you Nick Hornby, high fidelity fans out there, here are my top 5 Ross Atkins hint about the offseason and spring training. And all of these hints actually could be found if you read between the lines of what Ross was saying on the press conference. Now, number one, I'm going to give you the quote first, and then we'll talk about each quote. The first quote is, if we're in our control and we could just go on keeping the same team with all else being equal, that would be a decent start. And of course, he is referring to bringing really everybody back, but the two biggest elephants in the room, Marcus Semien and Robbie Ray. Atkins emphasized that he had talked to Semien and Ray in September to let them know that, look, we want to try to find a way to bring you back. And he vowed, and since he's works for Rogers Communications, I guess he has unlimited minutes in text. I'm not sure about whether he has unlimited data, but he has all of those things where he can stay in touch with both players and their representatives. I honestly don't know that the Jays can bring back both. And I'm a little unsettled about the prospects of bringing either of them back. Not that they don't deserve to come back. As much as I think Marcus Semien signing was not a good idea. I think their performances are going to get them some big, big money. And despite the Blue Jays, coming out and saying, and Atkins said it in the press conference, we have the backing of management that, that they're willing to give us, the resources to bring in whatever we need to bring in to win an AL East or win a pennant or win a World Series. Ultimately, you have to think a little bit ahead at what's coming up arbitration-wise. The core, which everybody celebrates about the Blue Jays, whether it be national media, whether it be U.S. media, whether it be fans, they all celebrate the core, the young core, how we developed and turned things around in the minor league system. Eventually, those prospects become major league regulars, and then they become payroll problems. And it's a good problem to have, but ultimately, arbitration is going to start, these people, the Vladdies, and, Jordan Romano and Biggio and Teoscar Hernandez, all of these guys are gonna start getting some pretty Bo Bichette certainly are gonna get some pretty sizable arbitration dollars. You have to plot for that. So when you're saying, we have to bring Semien back, we have to bring Ray back, they've got the money. That's true. They have the money this season and probably have the money next season. But then you're starting to run into issues. And I don't think Rogers is giving a blank check to the front office. You really have to kind of plot that out. And I know you don't want to hear that because you want to win now. And that's true. If the Blue Jays are going to just say, we're going in and we'll deal with it 2 years down the road, we're going all in the next 2 years, when you still have Barrios and you still have Guerrero and Hernandez and Bichette under, controllable contracts, and Romano, Ryu will be toward the end of his deal. Springer's got a whole bunch of time left. If you're just saying, fine, we're going to put it all in and then we'll just sort it out later, that's okay. I wouldn't necessarily be against that. But if you believe in keeping the core together, and I believe that that's something that the front office truly intends to do, they can't keep them all, I don't think, no matter how hard they try. But, you need to start planning for that. So that was an interesting thing. Of course he's going to say that. But he also danced around the thing that potentially he's going to keep in touch, but I don't think down deep he thinks he's going to be able to keep both or either of them, to be honest. And a related thing, and it's probably a bigger issue baseball-wise, but at least in the press conference, Atkins said, there may be a point where we have to make a decision with a little bit of uncertainty. And of course, he's talking about the upcoming CBA. There's a lot of resentment, I think, on the players' part. I think they know they kind of gave a little bit too much last time. I think they want to have more, not freedom, but they want to be able to not have to play for as many years before becoming eligible for free agency, or at the very least, arbitration be shortened by a year before you become a free agent. Get rid of this Super 2 stuff, draft pick compensation, get rid of that. So again, it's easier for teams to sign free agents and not worry about giving away their number one draft pick. Because God forbid, GMs love them, their number one draft picks. And uncertainty is an area that Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins have never liked to be. Not when they were in Cleveland. And that's why they were very aggressive with guys like Grady Sizemore and several of their regular players and pitchers, signing them before their arbitration was up and eligible for free agency, 2 longer-term contracts. Now, that didn't always work out because of injuries or various things, but they really were very aggressive. They like certainty. I think this offseason is going to make them a little uncomfortable. And they're going to have to take risks if they want to settle their roster early rather than wait and then have things potentially backfire because they were so aggressive early. I personally really hope that they do take risks. I know, again, our senior editor, Sean Doyle, had an article on JaceFromTheCouch.com that discussed that as well. Not necessarily being as risky as I would advocate, but still saying, look, they can afford to take some risks now to build on that core. I don't know that they're comfortable doing that, especially not so much with the free agent compensation option, which could hurt them down the road if some of their core does outprice themselves from the Toronto market. But fewer years of control, it's a different labor market. I don't see them going out on a limb and players aren't going to give in as easily and sign extensions. I think they're going to get the top free agent dollars that they feel they earned. Jose Barrios, that's coming up next year. His control is over. He's publicly stated and has never wavered from that. He's going to try to squeeze every dollar he can out and maximize his free agent value. So these are all things that they have to consider. Another interesting quote, which I think was very positive, is that I can't say enough about Romano and Meza. At some points in the year, they put some guys on their backs. And that's Atkins coming out and saying, our bullpen at the end of the year was so much better than it was during the year. Now, mind you, it's his fault the bullpen wasn't better in May and June when the injuries came around and options were available. But still, he is right. And Romano and Meza saved the Blue Jays season, literally. No pun intended. And you add in Simber and Richards. That's a good foundation and a really attractive framework to build as far as building what I believe they need to do, a mega bullpen. Bring in as many guys that have been there before, that have done the job. Again, everybody's going to have a bad year, but has done the job consistently. Bring in as many arms as you can. And in the article about free agents, our Bob Ritchie brought up a terrific target in Raisel Iglesias, the former closer of the Reds. He was just terrific this year. And he was a great closer in a tough ballpark. He's a free agent, and that's somebody that if the Jays can corral him, even if he's not going to close, man, talk about adding to the 4 core pieces you have. You've got your 4 core offensive players. You've now got a bullpen core as well. And I believe Kendall Graveman's name came up. I want to say it was the hostess with the mostest, Karen Suter, that talked about bringing in Kendall Graveman. And again, he's an experienced guy. He's had a couple good years in a row. I don't really think that he wants to stay in Oakland. I'm not sure that Oakland can afford to keep him in Oakland. They don't even know where they're going to be playing. So some interesting things with the bullpens. And I think and Atkins basically came out and said, it's a priority. We need to add to these pieces. So that's a good positive. That's a treat and not a trick as far as what Atkins did. Another comment, and it's related to the bullpen, was about Nate Pearson. Atkins said, we're hopeful that Pearson is someone who will be more of an extended outing, closer to a starter. Look for us. So in essence, he's starting to warm up to the idea, or get Blue Jay fans warmed up to the idea, that Nate Pearson's going to be in the bullpen. And I've been saying all season long, with all his injury problems, make him a leverage reliever. And leverage relievers does not necessarily mean the ninth inning. Leverage relievers can mean, coming in the fourth, pitch the fourth, fifth, and sixth, or sixth and seventh, or seventh and eighth, or whatever combo you want to do. Sort of like the old style relievers, like when I was a kid growing up. Okay. And yes, they had television, and yes, we had radio. Okay. But you had guys like Raleigh Fingers and Goose Gossage. Many of the members of the Royals World Championship bullpen that everybody tried to model themselves after and rave about. Dave Justy. There were these guys that didn't necessarily come in and pitch the ninth solely. They would come in with one out in the sixth or seventh and then pitch to the end of the game to save a bullpen, or they were just so effective and they were so good at it that Fingers and Gossage were both starting pitchers at the beginning of their career. So I think it's a nice little bridge with Pearson. I hope they don't make him a glorified opener. I hope that they make him a full-time bullpen piece, and I think that could make a huge difference to the Blue Jays bullpen. The most interesting and disturbing or confounding quote that I came across was, there are ways for us to field a team without signing a third baseman, but it is an area that we will obviously be thinking about in free agency. Which way do you go, George? Which way do you go? Ross Atkins knows they need to bring in a major league third baseman. That's not a knock on Santiago Espinal. He's another unsung hero from this season. Breivik Valera, despite the fact that I've drafted him just about every single year in my fantasy baseball league since he was first signed, he's not an everyday answer at third base. And I think in all fairness, with Simeon moving on, probably, you put Biggio back in his comfort area of second base, where he was going into this season considered the fifth best second baseman in Major League Baseball. Who are they going to get? Probably need to trade for one, unless they convert somebody. But to say that you could construct a team without adding a third baseman, well, that's true. I mean, the Pirates and the Orioles, and the Tigers can construct a team without filling major holes, whether it be in the rotation or the bullpen or third base or whatever it is. But those teams are going to stink. So if you really want to make the playoffs and win your division, which increases your odds of advancing rather than this one and done, wild card deal. Okay, there might be expanded playoffs, fine, but depending on what the format is and whether the union goes along with it, we can't play playing baseball to December either. So I mean, it's going to be one game scenarios, one and done type of situations potentially. So for him to say, well, we could construct it, that's just being dishonest. I understand you can't sell, the state secrets, to whatever nuclear bomb or nuclear energy concept you have to power this team to victory. But to come out and say, well, we could just construct it, that's just not being honest. I mean, he eventually did say, well, we certainly intend to, consider it in trades and free agency. But I think, as he sort of danced around the bullpen issue, he needed to be a little bit more upfront about the need to bring in a third baseman. Santiago Espinal is going to be so much more valuable being a 2 or 3 day a week player. He can play all infield positions. I think, be honest, Ross. Okay. The other 29 GMs out there are well aware that the Blue Jays need a third baseman. It's not like it is a state secret and nobody knows. So that was my takeaway from his press conference. If you have differing viewpoints for the next 5 minutes of the show or so, please do put them up on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. I do check throughout the week for comments on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page. So let's keep the conversation going. Now, I had come into this show thinking that I was going to spend the majority of this show on this brilliant idea I had, where I was calling you folks out and saying, have you ever cheated on the Blue Jays? Meaning, okay, you're a Blue Jay fan, but you got so frustrated, especially in the years of Gord Ash and J.P. Ricciardi, when they first brought in Shapiro and Atkins, that wasn't exactly warmly received. Did you ever find yourself kind of drifting over, with the remote, going over to support a different team? And I'm not talking about rooting for a National League team and rooting for the Jays. I think every baseball fan should do that because, well, of course, that's probably going to change when they approve the universal DH, but they're two distinct brands of baseball. So it makes sense to be, have an American League team and a National League team. Now, I've lived primarily in National League cities. I live in Pittsburgh now, so I follow the Pirates as my National League team. But when I was down, in the Gulf Coast area, I rooted for the Marlins. They were on TV. I rooted for the Marlins. Growing up in the New York, New Jersey area, I was a Met fan and I followed the Phillies. But in the American League, I took it a lot more seriously. I was a Red Sox fan until I became a Blue Jay fan. And how did I become a Blue Jay fan? I cheated on the Red Sox because my high school major league icon, Mark Lamangelo, who had a difficult half season when he was with the Blue Jays in 79, I started going to games, making a point of tuning in games on the radio. This is before streaming options and everything. And I fell in love, with what the team was doing and with the city itself. I loved Exhibition Stadium. So I cheated on the Red Sox, became a Blue Jays fan. But I'm astounded because I've gone on Twitter. I've gone to various Facebook groups, even behind the scenes at Jays from the Couch, and said, have you ever cheated on the Blue Jays? And it's a credit to you, Blue Jay fans. It's a Blue Jays way. You are Blue Jay fans first. I have to admit, I'm a little baffled or befuddled. It's not a horrible thing to admit that maybe you followed a different team for a little while. I flirted with being a Mariner fan because of Ichiro. And then I know a couple of people on the couch. Sean Doyle talked about he'll root for an opponent playing the Jays if they're going for a record or they have a perfect game or a no-hitter going. Karen Suter mentioned Brayton Halladay in Team Canada in a spring training game against the Jays. And in 1996, I believe she was rooting for the Orioles to beat Andy Pettitte so that Pat Henkin would have a better chance at the Cy Young. But kudos to you, Blue Jay fans. I mean, I didn't have anybody fess up and say, I cheated on the Blue Jays, but I'm sorry. I confess. I repent. So good for you. You ruined my show, but really, I do that well enough on my own. I don't really need support rooting my show, but great for you. I think it's a good thing to know. I think it shows the character and loyalty in the Blue Jays fan base. Maybe Major League Baseball will be tuning into this show, and they'll recognize that there's actually there's great baseball fans in Toronto. Maybe you should pay more attention to them and not just the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Cubs. Well, that's all for me this week. Thanks for tuning in to the On Fek Circle. Don't forget, coming up on Monday, Jays from the Couch radio podcast, fake news segments. Karen Suter is doing shows every other week, so she will not be on this Thursday, but the following Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, sunny side of the dome. And make sure you check out our free agent and trade target articles on jaysfromthecouch.com.